Welcome back to Fossil versus Future, an intergenerational conversation about climate change. I'm Daisy.
And I'm James.
And today we're diving into a topic close to both our hearts: music. What about music? Like any industry, music has a carbon footprint, from live events and global touring to merchandise and streaming. The UK music industry has been estimated to produce around 540,000 tonnes of greenhouse gas emissions every year, roughly 0.1% of the country's total energy-related emissions. Big numbers, but not the biggest. What makes music unique is its reach. To explore this topic, we are joined by someone who bridges both worlds. Daniel Morrell is the founder and CEO of BalanceEco Limited, a platform that enables businesses to balance their environmental impact through biodiversity creation. With over 25 years in sustainability and environmental activism, Daniel is a pioneer in the field. He co-coined the term carbon neutral, which was later recognized as the Oxford English Dictionary Word of the Year. He has addressed the United Nations, advised at 10 Downing Street, and published a paper on carbon pricing with the US Bar Council. He has advised the Alliance of Small Island States on adaptation and mitigation, and has led teams working with over 250 blue-chip companies on climate and sustainability policies. But Daniel is also a situationist artist, author, and electronic musician. He has helped plant millions of hectares of forest in collaboration with artists and musicians, and co-founded Chant Live, a space punk band that merges music, activism, and performance. Music can reduce its footprint, and we're already seeing change. In 2023, Glastonbury Festival was powered solely by fossil-free energy, using a combination of renewable electricity, solar photovoltaics, and battery hybrid systems, as well as generators powered by vegetable oil. And in 2024, Coldplay announced that direct emissions from their current world tour were almost 60% lower than those of its 2016 to 2017 stadium tour, with 18 shows powered entirely by portable battery systems and 72% of all waste diverted from landfill. And beyond cutting emissions, music can inspire. Artists can use their platform to speak out, and songs can turn complex ideas into something that really resonates. One of our favourites has to be Joni Mitchell's Big Yellow Taxi. Don't it always seem to go? You don't know what you've got till it's gone.
And we do love that song.
We do.
That song is a fabulous song. Brilliant artist. But we wanted to cover this topic for a while now, partly because it's a connection between us. Mm-hmm. It's an intergenerational connection. And partly because music has this extraordinary power to connect the generations, people across cultures. The language of music translates brilliantly across other language barriers. And partly because of a sense that it's quite a big industry with quite a significant reach into our economies that can carry messages, that can communicate an idea that could grip, that can change consciousness, that could do something to move an audience, to connect an emotion with a set of otherwise hard to reach facts. And I thought of Dan, obviously, because he and I have been having a go at this topic for a very long time. And lots of attempts, some of them, not all of them successful, but this notion that music could carry a message, organize a response, make money move to, find a way of getting something done through a route that connects mood, emotion, feeling of capability to act. And Dan, yeah, I thought you would be very good to join us in this conversation, bring some of your experience and help us figure out how to get an argument to fly that there is something about music and the way we engage with it that can enable lots of people who perhaps didn't think they could do very much about the problem to connect and do something useful and productive with their time and energy. So Dan, Talk
Thank
to
you.
us.
Well, thank you, James. And it's lovely to be here with both of you. So, yes, the idea of an industry, and as you described it, the music industry, well, it used to be a music business and then it became an industry, which is a very interesting part of the dynamic of what's really gone on and going on. But the idea of using artists and working with artists as a platform for communication of important issues has a great historical legacy. If you look at, I mean, we're probably too young, James, but my brothers were hippies, and there was the counterculture of the '60s that was the evolution from the '50s, and suddenly you got a teenager, and then they revolted, and then they had this counterculture, and everybody got cool, and Jack Kerouac, and all the Ginsbergs, and all that sort of stuff, and then it morphed into the protest of the Vietnam movement, and Thunderclap and Newman, and Something in the Air, and Joni Mitchell, and all these sorts of things happened there, and that was a music business. But it was actually artist driven into being activists, and it had a huge cultural impact. It created power to the democratic and maybe the left wing, and et cetera, et cetera. So that was the foundation of music being really being counterculture. That's very important, because counterculture is where you get movements that evolve from, and then they go mainstream and they have a big effect. So that was the beginning of it. We had a go in the '90s, and I think with climate, people didn't understand CO2 or climate impact or footprinting or anything like that. But what they really got was trees, which was the beginning of the Future Forest Initiative. And I had the great honour, the great joy of meeting, Michael Eavis gave me tickets to the festival, and I met Joe Strummer backstage, and carbon neutral was a new idea and nobody even heard of it. I'll be the carbon neutral ambassador, and I'll get behind you, Dan. And that was amazing. So, and that was from authenticity. It wasn't about a PR stunt or wanting to have a lot of comms, but that Joe kind of very helpfully helped me kick the whole carbon neutral and the carbon movement idea off in the early '90s, mid '90s. And then there's the Sex Pistols' Filthy Furious Forest, and Pink Floyd have got a beautiful forest in Dryhope in Scotland, and there is a Ronnie Wood. There was a Ronnie Wood that got planted in Mozambique in a war zone, and then under my own cost and my own hoo-ha, I replanted that in 2015 with ayahuasca shamans in Argentina.
Of course you did.
There's permaculture, so and agroforestry, and all these lovely things going on. So there's a lovely story there, and I think that the poignant thing is that it's all about, if you're working with music, it's got to be from the point of view of authenticity. The disastrous aspect of the counter side of that is if you've got the need for counterculture and cool, and then you've got musicians getting out of private jets and doing gigs at Wembley and saying, people like Live Earth, if you want to save the climate, we've all got to jump up and down, which is what Madonna said. And it was like, the Pussycat Dolls go on stage, and they actually asked one of my crew, "What's this climate change thing? What's it all about?" As they're walking on stage. I mean, really? I mean, and that was kind of like the nail in the coffin, really, for celebrity support around climate. And then in the old adage, and I don't want to be unfair to Bono because he's such a cool guy and he's lovely, but the old adage and the joke is, if there's a disaster, then you really know it's happening when Bono turns up to try and do something. So there's a tremendous amount of cynicism around it. I mean, George Monbiot, for example, just ripped it all apart.
Yeah.
And I think what you've ended up with now is incredible resistance from the artist community to get involved. And if the manager will tell an artist who's not a non-expert not to get on telly in front of a platform of extremely experienced journalists who are wanting to pull apart a very controversial issue.
Yeah.
I mean, like, why would I put my artist in a position to do that?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where we've gone full circle. And interestingly, the counterculture that was initiated in the '60s and the '70s, kind of, that's also gone full circle, where we've got this whole thing of women's rights in employment and efficacy around employments in diversity and social. ESG is really important for investment and looking at the structure of your. Anyway, in many respects, the counterculture kind of did its job, and went full circle. So we're in the awful position now is we've got the backlash against that, and now the counterculture is actually the right wing. And that is the unfortunate position that we've got ourselves in, of how do you activate counterculture without engaging in confetti culture like K-pop, hoo-ha, and selling it. So I've got some strong answers to that, but I'm conscious that I'm now you've got me on my favourite subject. I'm wanging on so much. So,
but Dan,
let's have your
tell
response.
us. Well, also, I know from our experience, but all of us going to Glastonbury, that Glastonbury is a great gathering. It brings together a lot of people with love of music, but also capacity to join in a sort of festival of ideas. And you've been going forever, but also performing there. And just tell us a little bit about what you've been doing with Chant, because, and just whilst you're on the Chant example, the idea of connecting an audience with an environmental theme via a technology, via an app that you developed some time ago with your colleagues. I've always liked that idea of being able to lend your voice as a fan to the co-creation of music in that group, in that audience, and then have your voice used to communicate an idea, like, for example, protecting forest or whatever it is that whatever the environmental theme of the day was.
Well, thanks, James. I mean, that's the key thing. So the Chant Live initiative was really, what you've got is artists, young artists come out and they become, they start to put out material, and it goes out to their network of followers. And what they do is they create content in order to what the audience likes. So you've got the Velvet Underground could never exist in a situation where you've got breadth and you're catering to the lowest common denominator, which is your audience. The best music out there is stuff that people really hate before it actually catches on. So rather than going breadth, Chant Live has gone depth. So we're looking at art as situationist artists. So what we've done is we've got a show together, which we did 8 gigs at Glastonbury this year in 8 different genres.
Wow.
And what's such fun about it is that we're all rehearsed up, and we've got 8 projects in 8 different genres. So we're doing a krautrock, and we're doing a trance, and we're doing a deep house, we're doing an indigenous. We've even got a glam rock show, and we perform these variant shows in variant locations under the radar. What we do is we put microphones into the audience. So we have a voice collector or 2 going around and asking the audience what they feel about things, such as water or atmosphere or health or sustainability or animal welfare, etc., etc. So we kind of theme it, and then they put their voice into the live show. And then I do the mixing, but it's all mixed in a program called Ableton, which means it's BPM, beats per minute, synced up, and it's tuned, and then it's pumped back out at the audience, and it's synced up to the point where it sounds like an excellent production. So it really is amazing. Now, if you've got somebody dancing, and then they hear their voice, them and their mates, they start laughing. Now, when you've got somebody laughing and dancing, that's like the sucker punch moment. It's where you've got the lightning in the bottle of a moment in a show. I call it the unobtainium. Anyway, so we found the unobtainium, and it's really fun. So what we've then done is, as James said, we've created an app, a technology whereby you can hear our live show, or you get a profile of it before the gig. You pay to get your voice into our show, and then you get a track back afterwards that you're mixed in. And a proportion of the funds go to create Balance, which is the BalanceEco, which effectively plants trees. So you sing trees to life. So the audience's voice is turned into trees, and they are land art forests. So that means that your audience as an artist, also when the audience gives their voice, they get a sonic footprint. So you can see the waveform pattern of your voice. And so you're a digital artist and you're a real artist and there's a real event. Most people are trying to make the real world digital. We're going the other way around to make the digital world real with the audience and having a bit of fun with it as well.
Excellent. Daisy,
Does sound fun.
We got to go next.
Yes. I'm sad that it's the Glastonbury Fellow year next year. I have to wait
so it is, yeah.
till the following year. And you said that we're sort of losing artists working in this space, but there are a lot of younger generation artists that are speaking out about climate change. For example, we were just talking about Billie Eilish as an example of a young generation artist who's very active in the climate space, and she hosts these overheated events to bring together climate activists and musicians. And then, well, we mentioned Coldplay and the introduction, and Massive Attack are another example of a band that are really speaking up around climate change, and they've had a partnership with the Tyndall Centre for Climate Change Research, where they've put out a roadmap for the UK live music sector, and apparently their show Act 1.5 broke records in terms of its carbon emissions and had emissions 98% lower than an average comparable show. So there are examples of artists that are using their platform to make a difference and to educate. But yeah, like you say, Daniel, maybe there's some anxiousness about doing that.
The anxiousness is only like a historic journey. There is fantastic work that has been done within the industry. And a lot of footprinting and understanding its footprint, and then actually looking at ways of reducing, which is evident. I mean, for example, Ecotricity, Del Vince is doing this thing with Massive, and then putting in battery systems, if you're getting rid of generators. We're looking at carpooling. So the work Massive Attack did there was exemplary. Yeah. So there's a lot of Billie Eilish has done that. Aurora is doing it. Yes, there's a lot of really young up and coming people who are not doing it for, uneducated PR and a bit of like, oh, we'll help out, and it went wrong, which is what probably would have happened when people weren't that aware. So there's a tremendous amount of knowledge that has come in, and there's a new beginning really within the music community the music industry is looking at taking a real response. For example, we BalanceEco, we've created a methodology that's being peer-reviewed or up for peer review. It's in preprint at the moment, but it's a really, really robust piece of science. And we've aligned with the data from the industry, which will be announced in October this year, which is now, I think about the 27th. So anyway, very shortly. And what it is, it's there's MIT, there's the information from the Coldplay thing. There's also Julie's Bicycle, and there's a greener festival, and there's a whole alliance of them. And remarkably, and it's a gargantuan task, so salute to those cats who've done it. They've managed to get the data from 60 odd festivals and actually get an industry together. And now everybody's agreeing, and we also agree with all the stats. So we've reviewed our science in advance of going live with this. But it's coming out at around 15 kilograms, 15.1. So let's say it's 15 kilograms per day per punter. And the vast majority of that is audience travel. Right. And then it's around about 80-20. In terms of audience and in production, it's even taken into account the footprint of the food and the production and the daily activities. Anyway, there's a ballpark thumbnail figure of 15. Obviously, it varies from festival to festival. Incredibly useful, because it means the festival community now knows, because you look at attendance number, it now knows its footprint. Now, the objective of having that figure is how do you reduce it? Well, enter left, right field. This new battery system. If we can get generators out of festivals, that can really have a good effect on the 20%. And then you reduce audience travel and that sort of thing. So what you could do is maybe get that 15 kilograms a day down to within a year or so. You could, if you get it cut down to 13 or 14. If you get it in half, actually reduce it by half. That's the objective, is to really go for it.
And we've had good discussions before about plastics, waste, and various things where obviously festivals produce a lot, and nobody really likes it. They don't like to see the mess afterwards. It's true that festival goers can be pretty wasteful and messy, and frankly, we could all behave better.
Yeah, people just leave their tents behind.
I'm afraid that is a shocker. Yeah, people do. But we talked about Notpla, the alternative, the sort of seaweed-based alternative, and they deliberately focused on these big events, whether it's marathons or music festivals, to try and do something about the disgraceful amounts of plastic waste. And so developing an alternative to that made out of seaweed rather than fossil fuels. And so you can see this, once you've got those sorts of benchmarks, something to aim at, some kind of understanding of where we are, how could we improve, you create space for people to come up with clever ideas. And just to return a little bit to the art itself, as opposed to all these essential tasks, re-engineering of a process or re-engineering of a system to reduce emissions, I do think that it matters that artists write about and sing and play music that carries these messages of connection to others, messages that reaffirm our connection to other living species, to make us feel a sense of belonging to a bigger space than the one that we occupy when we are at work or in our relatively safe homes in wherever we live in the Western world. And festivals are good at that. Festivals are very good at taking a member of an audience and connecting them to the others around them, but also to bigger themes. But just returning to Dan's authenticity point, if somebody wants to write about the climate change theme and find their own voice in doing so, the chances are that they will make a connection with their fan base. And the variety of types of music that we now can consume, one of the great benefits actually of the modern technology and streaming, is that vast archive of music is available to everybody everywhere. And I would argue, slightly less of a division between the generations than there might have been. I don't know, when growing up, Dan, would you agree that there was perhaps a bit more us and them between the generations, my music versus your music? Whereas now I think less so, I hope.
Yeah.
Am I right about that?
Well, no, 100%. I think a lot of some of the biggest selling albums are like Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah.
Or like you've got the great big iconic ones that James and I grew up with are now being discovered by a new community. So that really is a vast proportion of record sales is catalogue. That's absolutely right. And there's a lot of authenticity going back into history, and also there's a tremendous amount of really great new music coming out. Yeah. But there's 10 times more music come out this year than there was 10 years ago, and a lot of it is really good. Yeah. But if it doesn't have a story, then the audience, to get attention, they look at a TikTok for 3 to 4 seconds, and so you've got a totally different consuming culture. So yes, you're absolutely right. If you've got story, you can create. So, but the sort of toe curlingly, buttock clenchingly worthy moment when an artist starts singing about the environment that will appeal to the 0.25% who will love it and who want to knit their own lentils, and that actually can be off-putting. So how do you communicate environmentalism and these incredibly important causes without doom and glooming people or turning them off with the worthy moments?
Yeah.
And that was really the idea of this Chant live app. Because what you can do is you can put your voice into a track, you get a track back, and your voice creates balance.
Yeah.
And really, just a heads up on balance. Balance isn't an offset. Balance creates a three-pillared approach. It creates biodiversity primarily, and then it also creates a social well-being through beekeeping and permaculture and jobs for people. And it also addresses climate. So in many respects, you're leaving up to the audience's voices to do the work into the track. And this is available through the Chant app, through our live show, but it will also go out across industry. So we're putting it back on the audience, and they can use their voice to create balance. And then the audience, the artists don't necessarily have to sing about birds and bee loss and the rivers getting dammed up and that sort of stuff. So it's a way forward. And not to say that you don't want to have artists do the right thing and make a fuss about things they really care about. Absolutely, you need to do that. But this is one way of freeing it up from the artist, putting it in the audience. It's their voice that goes into tracks. It's their forests that get created. They can go and visit their own forests and can have some fun with it. And it's not baggage with the old carbon neutral offset arena.
Yeah.
I think there's so many ways that an artist can communicate, though, today. It's not just through their songs and their lyrics. I mean, these big artists have such a huge following via social media. So there's a lot they can do in terms of speaking out. For example, when there are elections, there's a lot of artists that sort of campaign for certain parties, for example. So by influencing the voting of their fans, they can have a big impact there. So I don't think it's song lyrics is the only opportunity in the social media age.
And I fully accept the Dan's language. It can be cringe-making when someone goes to a theme, they don't really fully grasp it, or it just seems just too worthy. I'm thinking more of artists who are capable of writing about this issue in a way that registers with an audience, or maybe finds a way of telling a story that engages and finds a resonance in an audience that could therefore respond to what is a huge, everyday, vitally important issue that's very hard to communicate by other means.
And Nature is actually an artist on Spotify now as well. I think you can listen to Nature, and by doing so, or artists can use Nature's tracks and then get, oh, Dan, do you know more about this than me?
Well, that's really poignant. So Earth Percent, Brian Eno's outfit of James, but what Earth Percent do is they put Mother Nature as a beneficiary in music, and then that Mother Nature actually gets through Earth Percent gets a royalty, and then that money gets used for doing all sorts of lovely things that Earth Percent engage in. They're a really good outfit. And yes, now Mother Nature is actually a recipient of royalty, which is just an absolutely genius idea.
Yeah, I love it.
You could imagine that happening in other domains, couldn't you? I mean, we struggle to find the connection between, say, the spiritual value of nature, the aesthetic value of nature, the restorative value in terms of mental health and physical health, and the value or lack of it in our economic and financial systems. It's a dilemma we've talked about in previous podcasts. And, we all of us who work on this theme are trying very hard to create economic value in nature without losing these other values. It's not easy, and it sometimes just doesn't work. But these are practical and I would find rather inspiring ways to do exactly that. There's no doubt that's an economic instrument. It's a levy. It's a kind of tithe valuing nature, and it needs to be carefully distributed and thoughtfully applied. You just don't want to create a flow of money that doesn't know where it should go. So you have to put work into knowing how to apply this money for good effect. But conceptually, philosophically, it's a sound idea to be able to connect an economic system to the value of a natural system and find ways of practically engaging with the complexity of the problem.
Yeah, the last thing we want to do is make people feel guilty.
100% agree, James. And that's really, really good point, because you can collect money from royalty, and then how do you get it to the right projects? And that's something that, Earth% are particularly good at. But if you put that example, then people can get it wrong. In terms of how do you fund projects, or where are the boundaries, what's the real benefit, and what's the authenticity. So actually getting money to the projects and getting the right things done. So you're converting the goodwill and the sentiment into a structure that has reporting and verification and an absolute transparent trail. And where you've got transparency, you get liquidity, therefore back into a structure. And
yeah, I think music has an impact, but we just don't want to take away the joy from an industry that brings so much.
Yeah.
For me personally, the joy and the motivation I get from music is something really important for me personally and in the work that I do. If I'm having a day where I'm feeling a bit doom and gloom about sustainability and climate change, I put on a favorite album and it can completely change my day. So I think focusing on, yes, we need to reduce the impact of the music industry, but also really use it as a way to catalyze change.
Well said. Let's do that.
100%.
Let's end on a joyous note.
Thank you so much,
Thanks, Dan,
for joining
yeah,
us.
we all need to have we don't want to go from denial to despair and doom and gloom.
100%.
We need to have a bit of joy around this again. And that's where music can really come in, is it can lift the spirits, and we can all actually have some fun sorting this mess out.
Totally.
Nice one. That's a good end point.
Thank you so much for listening to Fossil versus Future. Please subscribe to our podcast and give us a rating. And please follow us on social media. Let us know the questions that you want answers to or that you'd like us to discuss.